Mr. Reeker, welcome.
Thank you, Valona.
Let's begin with the Kosovo-Serbia dialogue. The United States is showing an increased role and interest in this dialogue. What new dimensions do diplomats Matthew Palmer and Richard Grenell give to this process?
Well, as you know, Valona, we've been supportive of the Serbia-Kosovo dialogue since its beginnings. We supported the European Union's effort. We've tried to be a partner in that effort. And I think the Secretary of State, Secretary Pompeo, demonstrated by elevating Matthew Palmer, one of my deputy assistant secretaries, to be the special representative for the Western Balkans, pointed directly to the focus that we have on the region. And President Trump supported that by appointing our ambassador to Germany, Richard Grenell, as a special presidential envoy for Serbia-Kosovo peace negotiations, to add a political dimension to indicate that we believe this is an important process and that the United States will do what we can to help that process.
You have a long time been involved in the mediation process between Kosovo and Serbia. How real are the chances for these two countries to reach a peaceful agreement?
Well, we believe that the chances are real. We believe there is a will on both sides. Most importantly, there's a broad desire for all the people in the region to live peacefully, to find ways to move forward with a view towards integrating more fully into European and transatlantic institutions, and to finding ways to better deliver security, stability and prosperity to all the people of the region. And I believe that is what the leaders both in Serbia and in Kosovo want to see happen. It's a question of finding the right dynamic, finding the ability to move forward, and that's what diplomacy is all about.
For more than a year now, the idea of border change has been widely talked in Kosovo. How realistic is to expect Kosovo and Serbia to agree on a new border?
Well, I think they need to look at what they can do to move forward rather than going with any preconceived notions of what a broader peace agreement may be. How can they recognize each other? How can they work to find better opportunities for their people? And that includes the economic opportunities that would come from resolving certain differences, from looking at ways to increase trade and opportunity and attract outside investment into the region more broadly. That's what the future holds for all of these people, and that's what the United States wants to support, what the two countries can do together to find a way forward without preconditions.
Does the United States support this idea of border change?
The United States supports the two countries working together through dialogue to find a way forward out of this, which will present better opportunities for the people in Serbia, the people in Kosovo, through the whole region. And frankly, that is good for Europe, and then it is good, in our view, for our broader transatlantic family of nations to be able to proceed in a more stable, more secure situation. And again, this is about the future of all the people in the region and the generations to come.
But are you concerned about the warnings that a possible change of border between Kosovo and Serbia could have a domino effect in the region?
Again, I think you're obsessing on ideas of changes of borders. That's not what we're focused on here. We're focused on the two countries finding ways forward, and to preconceive notions of what may be a way to find a resolution to establish this is not the way to go about doing that. And I really think it's an excuse by others not to proceed when they focus on things that they imagine beforehand. A negotiation is a negotiation, and that's what dialogue is about, sitting down and talking about opportunities, building confidence between the two countries. And that's why we have offered our diplomatic offices a special representative, a special presidential envoy to help bridge that and hopefully work with our European colleagues and counterparts to move the entire process and the region forward for a better future for everyone there.
Mr. Reeker, there are speculation for a kind of peace conference between Kosovo and Serbia organized by the United States. Is Washington planning something like that?
I'm not aware of any specific plans. Again, it's up to the the two sides to see what they can do to work on together. We've just had elections recently in Kosovo. We're waiting for the final formation of a government there. That's clearly an important step in a process forward. The dialogue process has been very important in the past in helping resolve certain issues, and we want to see both countries get back to the table together, back to dialogue.
Can we expect any meeting in Washington?
I'm not aware of any meetings in Washington now. I have plenty of meetings in Washington all the time. What the two sides need to do is decide how they can move forward, and we're offering our good offices and the support of American diplomacy, which we want to do with the European Union, and of course the two countries to move forward on an agenda that they have both set as priorities.
It seems a bit hypothetical, but if the deal is blocked, what would be the consequences of a continuing kind of status quo in the relations between Kosovo and Serbia?
Well, I think, first of all, as you yourself said, this is hypothetical. So why we spend a lot of time talking about hypotheticals? If there's no deal, then you stay in the status quo and you don't move forward. You continue to have instability in a region that needs more stability. You continue to let history drive the future instead of looking at the future and trying to shape a new history for the region, which we believe is very much possible. I think it's time to move ahead, to find ways that the people in Kosovo, the people in Serbia, the people throughout the Western Balkans can have more stability and therefore more opportunities for prosperity. To do that, you've got to have security. It's important that the peoples of the region recognize that they need to live together. The geography is a reality. Neighbors are neighbors, and that's not going to change. It's about finding a way to move forward and take advantage of what's being offered in terms of international support to find solutions and progress in this long-standing dispute.
Let's move to another issue now, Bosnia and Herzegovina. This country has spent a year without a state government now. How can Bosnia become a functioning state?
Well, I think it's important that the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina be listened to by their leaders. They're elected to govern, to bring functionality to Bosnia and Herzegovina. You know, it's almost 25 years since the Dayton Accords brought peace to an absolutely horrible situation. I think people may have forgotten just how awful the war in Bosnia was. There in really the heart of Europe, you had a terrible war. You had so many deaths, so many atrocities, mass exodus and migration. We found a road to peace through the Dayton process. And now, 25 years later, it is really time to move forward and make a more functional state. That's the obligation of the leaders in Bosnia and Herzegovina, all of them. And certainly that's what the United States supports. And we want to, again, work with our European partners to help promote that.
Yeah, you just mentioned the Dayton Agreement, and as you said, it was a major American contribution to the peace. How would you comment on the calls for changing it?
Well, the Dayton Agreement was brought into force to bring peace, to end that horrible war. It was never meant to be a permanent situation. What we need is a will, you know, on all sides in Bosnia and Herzegovina to look at what you can do to not only make the country more functional, but to offer more stability, more security, more prosperity. That's, again, what the people want, and we think moving forward on the types of reforms that the international community have encouraged, taking advantage of the goodwill and support that Bosnia and Herzegovina has from so many friends and partners, pushing back against the malign influences that like to see disruption in the region. That's an important step, and that's what our diplomacy is focused on.
Next year will be an election year in North Macedonia. The decision for these elections has been made after the European Council refused to open the accession talks with Skopje and Tirana earlier this month. What would be your message to Macedonian public and political parties there?
Well, North Macedonia has made enormous progress. In the United States, we were very pleased last week to see the United States Senate ratify fully North Macedonia's application to join as a full member of NATO. And indeed, North Macedonia will be the 30th member, the 30th ally of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So that's an enormous step. They've undertaken great reforms. They've entered into agreements with neighbors that have allowed them to move forward to this. We've already seen results in North Macedonia in terms of a renewed sense of stability and security, which increases opportunities and interest from foreign investors. That is important. We were disappointed. Secretary Pompeo made that very clear, that the European Council could not move forward to begin the accession talks, both for North Macedonia and for Albania. The European perspective, the idea that the peoples of Europe, these European countries, want to join the European Union has been a key component of our foreign policy. We are not members of the European Union, obviously, but we have supported that ideal, and our assistance programs, our diplomacy have all supported the reform efforts that these countries have undertaken to move in that direction, because we feel that's in the best interest of the countries, the region, and of Europe. And it's disappointing to see certain leaders with a sort of 19th century view of the Western Balkan region, and we hope that that's just a temporary impediment, that the countries will have an opportunity in the spring, as they said, to then have a new decision that would allow the accession talks to open. That, of course, is just the beginning of a long process, a series of chapters that those countries, just as new member states of the European Union, have gone before them in implementing the necessary reforms to meet the qualifications, to meet the requirements of EU membership. And I note that the Council did not require new steps, they simply deferred the decision, and we're hopeful that that's what that will be. I know in North Macedonia they've taken great steps in this direction. They're pleased to see the progress in the NATO process. We will be obviously recognizing that as the NATO leadership meets in December, and we'll continue to support their efforts, both in North Macedonia and in Albania, to move forward on the EU track as well.
But do you think this negative decision by Brussels could have negative effects in the region or open the doors to other countries?
Well, I do think it's important that this process, which the European Union and its member states have encouraged now for decades, should not be suddenly seen as thrown into doubt. These are European countries, and the United States has supported the ideal of a Europe whole, free, and at peace and prosperous as part of our foreign policy now really since the end of World War II. We are celebrating the 70th anniversary of NATO. NATO has clearly been an important key to bringing stability, first to Western Europe through the period of the Cold War, and then as NATO adapted to the post-Cold War era, took in new members and those who aspire to NATO membership, expanding partnerships with others as a defensive alliance. That has been an important key to having a level of security which has allowed this unprecedented era of prosperity throughout Europe. That's something that we're proud of. It's good for the United States. It's certainly good for Europeans. And as we celebrate these anniversaries and commemorate what we've gone through together, we believe that we need to keep on that track. There are those who would interfere in the countries of the Western Balkans simply to cause instability. There are those who don't want to see stability come because it affects their more negative interests. And so we will continue to stand with the peoples of the region as they want to move forward for better futures.
Mr. Palmer said last week that lack of decision for North Macedonia and Albania could open the doors to Russia. Are you concerned?
I think that's exactly a concern. We have seen the malign influence before in terms of how that has affected things in the region. Look, these countries have clearly stated that the direction they want to go is west. They are part of Europe and they want to be a part of the institutions and organizations that make up Europe and allow for greater prosperity, greater cohesion. They've made great strides in settling differences with their neighbors. That's a first step in taking the necessary reforms to qualify, simply to open the accession process, which will then, of course, take longer as each of these chapters is done, but that's a positive process. And we believe that they deserve a positive answer after doing exactly what they were asked to do and meeting the criteria necessary to move ahead.
According to you, where is the biggest Russian influence in the region?
Well, I mean, that's sort of up to others' views, how they want to view that. Russia is a country that has relations in the region, and of course we recognize that. We want to have better relations with Russia as well. I've been to Moscow and tried to talk to counterparts there about where we can try to build our relationship, but we have a lot of challenges. I think one of the most obvious places, most broadly, where the Russian malign influence is seen is in Ukraine, where Russia has invaded a country, has occupied a country, has continued to keep a hot war going in the eastern part of Ukraine. Thousands of people have died. They have undertaken obligations through the Minsk process to find a way forward and have not lived up to those proposals. That's what we want to see happen. Russians are paying a price for that, the actions of their government, but certainly Ukrainians are. And that kind of malign influence is something we don't want to see in other parts of Europe, certainly not in the Western Balkans.